Welcome back to a new episode of the D-League. Today, 20th anniversary. And today, Bilal and I, we will be talking about trading card games, or, well, card games, but mostly when you talk about card games in a video game context, then it's mostly about trading card game style games. And so how trading card game starts pretty much is you buy the game, or you download the game, and then you get a starting card pack so you can actually play matches, and then you buy or win booster packs, which include new cards. So you play or you buy cards to improve your deck, and that way you also kind of improve your chances of winning. And the gameplay is that, it depends on the game how many cards you draw, but first the game starts and everyone draws his or her cards, so the starting hand, and then you have one player starting who has the first turn. So it's kind of like in chess where white starts, so you could say, player one starts, and then that player does his turns, and then afterwards the other player takes his turn after drawing a new card or maybe multiple cards, and that's how the game kind of progresses. So it's about drawing cards, placing cards, and trying to win. And the win condition is getting the life points to 0 of the opponent, or if he doesn't have any cards left. So if he has no cards left and needs to draw a card, then the player loses because he or she cannot draw any more cards. And about trading card games, it's pretty much like real life trading card games, just digitally with, let's say, net play. So it kind of comes with the same, let's just say, attributes. For example, with card games, like I said, you need to win booster packs or buy booster packs, and so it can be kind of expensive in the long run. I mean, you can just play to have fun, but if you want to have stronger cards, they are, if you can buy single cards, then they are probably more expensive than weak cards, because everyone wants to have these strong cards, and most of the time they are also rare. So if you cannot buy single cards, then instead of opening one, you can get lucky and get the cards in your first booster pack. But if it's very rare, and let's say only one of 100 booster packs has that card included that you want, then you might need to buy 100 or more booster packs to actually get that one card you want. And the kind of the exception is that if you have something like a fan platform, like a fan online platform where somebody actually wrote his or her own program. Of course, we kind of talk about development, game dev in this podcast, but as a player, you might be able to use something like this to just pick the cards you want, and to kind of get used to the game before you go into it completely, like where you actually buy cards and stuff to play in tournaments. So that's kind of how you start with a card game, or what's it all about. Of course, you also need a rule set, but that's kind of already implemented when playing the game. Like when you take, for example, taking turns or which player starts is already something about rules. And yeah, so I guess you need rules first, and then you can actually play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so Bilal, as a player, what do you think? Like, what is trading card games all about, and why is it kind of attractive, or why would people maybe start playing trading card games?
Well, in terms of how it works, I guess you kind of covered all of that. Except I guess what's kind of more complex is like the different types of cards to keep into account, like creatures or spells, etc. And then in the case of Magic, like more advanced spells, where like instants or sorceries, etc. But like to avoid going too in depth, I think your definition was kind of appropriate. Although I would add sometimes with when you run out of cards, I think in Hearthstone you just lose health every turn rather than instantly lose.
Okay.
I can't speak to the other.
Yeah, I know that in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, you just outright lose. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I guess in terms of like why somebody would want to play a trading card game is, I mean, lots of reasons. I guess you can kind of just start with like what aspects are in a trading card game. I mean, first off, you have turn-based strategy, basically, which is really attractive because people like to think about what to do next, and they can like kind of take their time to figure out exactly what the best next option is. And if you're very good and you know like what every card is and what every card will do, or maybe you've seen examples of the other guy's deck before and you can kind of guess what he's going to do next, then you can kind of determine what to do afterward, and lots of players find that attractive. And other reasons are like trading card games, like they're called trading card games because people like to collect the cards, they like to trade them around and be able to like it's interesting both to have cool cards and to use like actually strong decks. And sometimes maybe even not the best decks, but maybe like a cheese deck, which is just fun to do a certain strategy that's not the best, but see how far you can get doing it. For example, in a ladder or I don't know, a tournament or something else like that. So yeah, I covered trading and something I just forgot what I said at the beginning. Anyway,
strategy.
Yeah, strategy. So those two, and so I mean, I think those are the main two reasons. You can kind of go farther with stuff that's kind of general to games, like saying the competitive aspect, or I don't know, meeting people or like trying your deck against whatever else is out there. So you kind of like meet a new battle each time. Of like, you have the ability to change your deck, the other guy changes his deck and his play style, because, well, not the other guy, but like you find new people with different play styles and different decks. So it's kind of that exploration also added into the mix of competition and strategy, as well as the collection aspect.
Yeah, I think some people actually just like maybe the art of the cards. Mm-hmm. So where they, let's say they have their favorite card because of the artwork or maybe the function that it has. So maybe you have like a legendary creature that's really expensive to play. I mean, with in-game resources like mana or whatever the game uses. So you get it on the field very rarely, but maybe you just enjoy kind of going for it, like and you just enjoy playing that card or something.
Yeah.
So at least from real trading card games, you just have cards where you say, okay, that artwork looks really good. That's kind of amazing. So I think even for trading card games on the computer or smartphone, you still have cards where you say, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, actually, in terms of Hearthstone, I don't play it much anymore. But when I was playing it more, I would always run these stupid Murloc decks because I'd have a bunch of Murloc cards and then I'd put them together into a deck. And I mostly played a Warlock deck. And in Hearthstone, there are different characters that you play as, and they have different tokens, which will cost you mana each turn. And in the Warlock's case, you would use 2 mana, you would remove 2 of your health, and then you would draw a card. So my deck was all about getting out as many Murlocs as possible, and just attacking with them. And the reason for that was because they all had different bonuses that were based on each other. So like one Murloc would make every other of your Murlocs on the field gain +1 damage. Or there was another Murloc where whenever you put a Murloc on the field, its health and damage would go up. And, it goes on. Like there's one where you put down and it gives the rest health. And there's one that will like give a +3/+3 to a bunch of Murlocs. So you can kind of stack all these crazy bonus effects with each other. And it was kind of a cheese deck. It was a very like either fail or win deck. And it was very bad, but it was very fun. So you could kind of cheese your way up to a certain rank and then get crushed by players who actually know what they're doing. And so actually when I came back to Hearthstone a couple of months ago, like when I played it again, I didn't really like start seriously playing it, but the deck became like so much worse that I actually got kind of frustrated with trying to get new cards because it was very difficult to win with how shitty my deck was. So, but yeah, in terms of what you mentioned with art, it was I kind of like did this Murloc thing because it was funny, and it was also pretty fun. And when you would toss out Murlocs on the field, they would always make these like weird Murgler noises. So it was just so the concept of tossing them out was funny. It was a very troll deck, but yeah. So that was my experience with Hearthstone.
Yeah. So like your goal when playing Hearthstone was to kind of get the momentum very quickly by summoning lots of creatures,
basically, yeah,
on the field and just overrunning the opponent. And like another play style that you can use, in this case, it sounds like I'm just slamming cards on the playfield and I win. It's like I draw a card, I play card, and I do that every turn, and you just win by doing that.
Yeah.
But like I guess the main playstyle in trading card games is taking a deck and focusing on a card combo. So where like you have in Magic the Gathering, which is probably I guess the most played trading card game still. You can have a card that for example says discard 1 card and then do 1 damage. But then you have another card where you pick up the discarded card again and you can play it again without paying the cost for it. So and then maybe you have another card to be able to just loop that. So once you have these 3 cards in your hand, you discard, you do damage, pick up the card again, and discard it again for damage again. So you just loop and until the other guy is dead. So you have like those combos where if you have a set of cards in your hand or maybe on the playing field, you can just loop the effects and you can do infinite amounts of damage. So, or you gain an infinite amount of life points, or you whatever. So that kind of that's also something you need to kind of keep in mind. So maybe your Murloc deck is strong against other decks that go for creatures because you just overrun them. They might be able to block one Murloc, but the 4 or 5 other Murlocs still attack and take off life points of the other player.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, in this case, it's like, yeah, you got 5 Murlocs and I only got 1 health point, but I just drew the combo and you still lose. Tough luck. So, yeah, in trading card games, it's, like you said, it's about strategy, so you need to know what cards actually exist, and it's really difficult to keep an overview about all the cards that exist in the current edition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, developers put out new cards or new effects, or they, if your Murloc deck was too strong, they might just ban cards.
Yeah.
So they say, yeah, your Murloc General that gave +3 attack and +3 life points to every Murloc, yeah, that's totally OP. Yeah, we banned that card. So, yeah, I mean, you cannot nerf you cannot nerf the card, because that would be like, it's worth $100 at first because it's completely broken and you need that card, and then suddenly it's completely useless because they changed 3 to 1, and yeah, suddenly the card just loses value, and so I guess in case of trading card games, it's pretty much just letting the edition cycle out, so you cannot play the card anymore in the current edition because it's too old, or just banning it outright. And it's not something where you say, yeah, we fix it by changing the card, just where you say, yeah, we need to get rid of the card in some way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever has nerfed a card or not, in terms of the digital ones. Like, I don't know if Hearthstone has nerfed anything or not. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's kind of how it works. And it can be good because, like you said, it's hard to keep track of all the cards like in the game, especially if you're playing a version where you can play literally anything from the beginning to the current edition. So I know that Hearthstone also like employed that concept of, well, Magic calls it like standard and modern and legal.
Legacy.
Legacy. So yeah, Hearthstone also has like Wild and something else now. I can't remember what the name was, where it's the current cards and everything else as well. So yeah, that's kind of a good way of, I guess, it makes it easier for you to keep track of the ones in the current edition.
Yeah, I guess playing the current edition is also like the competitive standard for trading card games.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still, like you said, there are still formats where you are allowed to use older cards, but I guess it's more niche because, I mean, you don't lose cards, so if you have completely broken cards, then people just keep playing those, and you only consider new cards if they are even more broken.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
and yeah, I was gonna say, and that's like, yeah, probably the main two reasons for that are one, what you said, like people will just keep playing the same thing, and it's probably very boring. So if like competitive scene focuses on the new cards, then it's a lot more of an interesting competitive scene. And two, because money, like when people think, oh, if I want to play competitive, I need to play the new cards, well, then they have to buy the new cards. So in terms of Hearthstone, maybe you buy new packs. In terms of Magic, man, those cards are overpriced. So like you might buy a shitstorm of cards, and you won't get what you want. So maybe you like you go get a job and work overtime so that you can buy exactly the cards that you want off of other people.
Yeah, I think that's the standard for competitive play.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to build a deck, and you just either you buy booster packs and just sell off all the cards you don't need. So if you have something like a unique, or what is it? It is common, uncommon, and rare, I think, in case of Magic, if I remember correctly. So, like, common cards are completely worthless most of the time, because, like the name says, they are common. Mm-hmm. And uncommon, you can actually get some money out of if they are good. And then rare, if you have rare cards, of course, there are some completely trash rare cards, but then the super strong ones, like you said, they are really expensive. So yeah, like if you play Magic, or if you want to play Magic, then I mean competitively, then you can expect to drop like €300 or $400 just to have a competitive card deck. That's completely bonkers. But you can, if you got a good deck, then you can actually make money by playing the game. So even in the local scene, because you got the stronger deck, and that's the way you just win more frequently, I think.
Yeah. And that's once you're in a super high competitive part, like then you'll be able to recognize, oh, this guy's running this kind of deck, or scouting people, like this guy probably will do this. For example, like just like in StarCraft or League or any competitive game, you'll see that pros are kind of like scouting what the other guy does or the other team, and they'll just know like what kind of strategies they follow and kind of react based on that with whatever deck they're running.
Yeah, I guess you just check like the current trend, and so you can counter it or just use it yourself.
Yeah,
I mean that like we talked about what trading card games are about like strategy and deck building, and so I think as a player you kind of need creativity, and you need to understand like what cards you can use for which strategy. I mean, you can buy all the super expensive cards and put them in one deck, and then you notice, they don't work with each other because they are just that expensive, because they are good in a combination with that or with one or two specific cards. So if you don't have them in your deck, then they are maybe mediocre. Maybe they are good, but difficult to play, to get on the field. So yeah, like that's kind of mandatory to be good at trading card games.
Yeah.
Except, like you said, you can just take a look at the deck of other players. So you just kind of steal the complete deck composition of another pro player, or if of one of the pro players, and then you just lean back and enjoy playing the strategy that some other guy came up with, and that you just stole to get some wins, I guess.
Yeah, I think in terms of in terms of lower tier, like you'll probably look at trends and then make a deck that not only you play well, but also has enough counterplay against like the current trends, and like you'd be confident going into like a lower tier tournament against it. But I think like higher pros kind of expect like other pros they've played against before to like rejoin the same like actual, for example, the official tournaments. Let's say like all the pros can expect other people who have played in official tournaments before to come back, and maybe they know like what they're playing, or they've played against them in some other smaller tournaments before, the main kind of thing. Like like scrimming in any kind of competitive game where you play against, you bring your team against another team, and just to practice before like a tournament. So yeah, I think that is kind of a more common thing for the pros because their pool of players is just smaller. So in terms of a lower tier, you can kind of just look at a trend and look at what decks are good right now and what you'd be confident running, I think.
Yeah. What might be more difficult to understand is, for example, in Magic the Gathering, you have a side deck. So usually your deck consists of 60 cards, but
so,
you
yeah.
have a side deck of 15 cards, which you can, if you play a best of 3, and you see, for example, let's say I play against you, and I notice that you are all about spamming Murlocs on the playfield. Then I put, and I know it's, let's say it's a strong style in the current edition. So maybe I lose or I win out of luck. But maybe if my deck is weak against it, but I have a side deck with 15 cards where I can say where I can have, let's say, my deck is only weak against your playstyle, so I maybe have 10 cards that counter your deck style, and so I can swap out these 10 cards of the side deck with 10 cards of the main deck, where I say, yeah, they are kind of useless against your game style, so I adapt by switching cards, but you must set them beforehand. It's not like where you say, yeah, I got my 3,000 magic cards and I'm gonna pick that one and that one. No. When you play in a tournament, you just have your 60. Well, you can have more than 60 cards in your main deck, but most of the time you don't. Because it decreases the chance of drawing the right cards. So you have 60 cards plus 15 cards to swap. And that's also, I guess, for a beginner, it's difficult to understand why would you need a side deck and which cards would you include there. So you can, maybe I would say, okay, I just I play a control deck, but I switch out some cards that kill creatures.
Yeah.
If they are on the playfield, so I can actually get them off the playfield and then control you afterwards, because I might not have the resources to control you right out, like in the first turns. So somehow I have to get rid of my kind of weaknesses or mistakes I made in the play. In the game. Yeah.
And I think that's a good. Sorry, do you want to go ahead or?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So I was just gonna say, I think that's a good example, like saying, this Murlocs versus your control, and with like a creature killing side deck, because I mean, if you think about it, like let's say, like you said, Murlocs or like Murloc spam is like really strong right now in, I don't know, for example, Hearthstone. And you'll know, like, there's this stupid Murloc cheese deck that's going around, and it's just a good example that if you had this side deck where you get to swap out cards into your main deck, like after a match, then you just know, like, well, you have a complete clear the board set of cards where you know exactly which ones to put in if somebody's running this stupid deck that's just like really cheese. Because when there's like a cheese strategy, there's typically a pretty good counter to it in a game, and if there is that good counter, then you kind of can shut the guy down pretty easily, as long as you know exactly what to do. Like, for example, in Hearthstone, if you're actually running this Murloc deck, there were two really annoying concepts. Like, one, there was, if you were fighting Mage, for example, then they kind of just clear your deck completely. If they get the right cards before you do. and the other one is like taunt cards, where you can't attack the player. You have to attack one of their. You have to attack all the taunted things first, or rather, the cards that have this taunt ability first. And so, for example, if they get like an 8/8 taunt creature and your Murlocs aren't boosted enough yet, like let's say you have a bunch of like 1/2 and 2/2 Murlocs and stuff like that, then you kind of have to lose all of your Murlocs to destroy this guy's taunt, because you just got unlucky with your draw, and so that's something that can kind of shut you down early with your attempted cheese strat.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much like you said. You didn't get lucky, and
Yeah.
that's something that is the main component of trading card games. Actually, it is about minimizing luck.
Yeah.
Where, in your case, you would have, I don't know. Do you have resources like lands in?
Yeah.
In Magic, do you have something like that there in Hearthstone?
Yeah, in Hearthstone. Yeah, so Hearthstone doesn't have any sort of colored mana. It just has mana. So how that works is each turn you get one new mana crystal, and like starting at 1, of course. So you have one mana crystal, and then the next, like after your turn ends, you grow a second one, and then once it's your turn again, they all refill. So then the next turn you'll have two mana crystals. And there are other cards where you can gain a mana crystal this turn, and it'll fill the next turn. Like, for example, the Druid, I believe, can do that. Yeah. And then there's also, if you're the second player, like if the other guy gets his first turn, then you'll get a mana coin, which lets you not gain a mana crystal, but you gain a mana that turn. So you'll get an extra mana to run. For example, a card that costs 2 mana that turn, or the second turn.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so kind of what you want to do is that you want to have a deck where you have, well, in case of Magic, you need to have your creatures and spells, but you also need to have lands, which you use to produce mana to play your cards, actually. So you have 5 different mana colors, which is red, blue, green, black, and white. So depending on the deck you're using, you need different lands, but then you have creatures or spells that maybe need 1 red mana and 1 blue mana. So you want to build a deck where if you use those cards, where you have maybe you are red focused, you mainly have red cards, but you also need the blue mana, so you want to draw mainly red lands, but you also want to have a chance to get the blue land, and so you put in more lands than you actually need. So maybe you have like 20 lands and 40 creatures, but you never need 20 mana for anything. So maybe if you have 5 or 6, then you say, yeah, I'm good. But it's just, you just put in more to increase the chance of drawing it. So in Magic, the limit of one card being in a deck is 4. So if you have a deck where the main component is, let's say, card A, then you put it in 4 times, and so you can. So you have like 4/16 of a chance. No, wait, that's 1/15 of a chance to draw that card that you need. But you also need to have the mana ready to play that card, actually. So you also want to include as many resources as necessary to have the mana reliably. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing when constructing a deck. It's all about kind of planning how high is the chance to get the combo or that that card on the playfield, and you can just vary. Like you say, okay, I want to be more risky. I want less lands because if I have I don't need the mana, so maybe I just put in 15 and 5 creatures or maybe 5 spells additionally in the deck. So even like the small things can be very kind of game changing when playing a different player. And yeah, so like you said, every game is kind of different, or the playstyle of a person is very different. So some players are more risky, some players play very safely, even when constructing the deck that they're using.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's next?
Well, I guess before we go to like the developer side, let's just quickly talk about the different playstyles or what they actually kind of are. I mean, you talked about spamming Murlocs, so that's an aggro deck where which can be either creature aggro, where you spam creatures, or spell aggro. For example, in Magic, it would be a red deck where you use spells to do damage. So you don't attack with creatures, but you do damage by using spells, and you want to finish the game quickly. So that's why it's called aggro, because you want to end the game quickly by doing damage before the other player can get his combo on the playing field. And then you have something like control, which is removing or keeping the other player from playing cards. Where, let's say you play a Murloc card, and then I have a counter card where I say, yeah, I use my resources to destroy the card you just played, and that's kind of controlled. So I keep you in control from not getting to play your game, kind of. And then you have decks that are card draw decks, where they have so many. They have cards that make you draw additional cards, and that way you get your combo more quickly. So maybe you have a card that lets you search for a specific creature or specific spell card, and that way you just need, let's say you have like effectively 12 cards that you actually use, and the rest is kind of just resources and drawing cards. So you're like, yeah, okay, I got 5 cards, and 4 of them are just drawing cards to get the 12 cards that you actually want to use in your playstyle. And of course, it goes the other way around as well, where you force the opponent to discard and discard and discard until they don't have any card left.
Yeah.
And in case of Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, the other player just loses, and that's like, you don't even attack, you just make him lose the game by not having cards to draw.
Yeah.
And that's also something that can be kind of frustrating to play against, because maybe you got your good card and then the other player just makes you throw it away. And so that are like the styles I know. I don't know if there's something more like special in Hearthstone that is very different from it? Do you know anything about that?
I haven't played it enough to be sure if there's like a deck like that. I remember decks like that to be pretty funny though. Like there are also decks that were just like about drawing yourself, like you described, kind of, but not just like searching for a certain amount of cards. But I can't remember how it worked. But yeah, no, I've seen that deck or a deck like that where they just try to make you lose by losing all your cards. That'd be interesting to see in Magic actually, or in Hearthstone.
Yeah, I also know that then you have some more niche. Like it's not pretty much a style, but in Magic you have, like I said, cards that let you maybe put a card into play from the graveyard. So you have a card that makes you discard, let's say, a legendary creature that costs 20 mana. So it's unplayable when playing normally. But then you discard it to the graveyard, and then you play a different card that makes you put it into play. And then you have that super powerful creature that's kind of unstoppable, and you just played it for 5 mana instead of 20.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a combo deck. So in this case, yeah, it's pretty much just combo for one specific card, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's kind of it, I think.
Yeah, I guess. Well, before we continue, I wanted to say, I think I started. This is kind of just about modern versus whatever. So like current deck or block, or current series or block of cards versus like all of them combined. Like when I played Magic, I played it pretty briefly, but I played it pretty much from Return to Ravnica through Dragon's Maze, and I played a lot of Izzet. And I remember, because my friends were playing it for like ever, they would just crush me because they had these crazy decks which would do, one time somebody just basically in one turn he dropped a bunch of cards that would let him like keep drawing and searching through his deck to like place enough of, I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was either this creature or a spell that just killed me in like one turn, and he was basically just sitting there for 2 minutes like cycling through his deck with these really OP cards, because Magic like went kind of in like the direction where like old cards were super OP in comparison to like Return to Ravnica cards, which were a few years ago is when that came out. But I thought, because I started at Return to Ravnica, I thought they weren't as like interesting, but they were fun in my opinion. And I played mostly Izzet, which was red and blue mana mostly. And that was pretty fun. It was like, the reason I kind of stopped was because I didn't want to spend cards to be really good at it. And I find like something boring if I'm not trying to be good at it. But yeah, so that was, I just wanted to say that was kind of my Magic experience, I guess, for the most part.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like when playing, let's say, first-person shooters, like an arena shooter or an RTS against somebody that is much more experienced or maybe involved in that game. Like, if you don't know how to move, and the other guy knows everything, or like all the maps, he knows all the maps completely. Like when stuff spawns or where you can move to, then chances are slim to win. And then in trading card games, like I said, playing, getting a competitive deck first can be very expensive. So I mean, if we would play like with our random old cards now, where we say I got those cards that I can use, and let's see what I can build from it. Then we might have fun, because I don't have a stupid combo, you don't have a stupid combo that's completely broken, and in your case, if your friends even used all those broken super old cards, then they are complete, let's say, assholes.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, because that's really unfair, because you don't even give the other guy a chance to play.
Yeah, I mean they weren't really interested in like actually buying the competitive cards, so they kind of just played with their old stuff. So it was like, well, one guy is just going to be the best. So
yeah, I mean, old cards are not always complete OP.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you have a very small pool of cards to use, like you just bought a starter pack and maybe one or two boosters, then yeah, you pretty much can only use the starter pack and maybe a few cards that you got out of the booster, because not every card is gonna have like the color that you are using, and so it's kind of useless to you. And yeah, so
I think in Magic, one of the big reasons why old cards are like pretty annoying is because they had, like, if you compare Return to Ravnica to, I don't really know any of the old ones, but like some of the old ones, they were really rule bending in comparison to like the new ones, because you could kind of do all kinds of crazy shit, like win in one turn, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's pretty much what Legacy is about.
Yeah. and like Return to Ravnica is like, it's like a lot more structured in my opinion, and like you kind of, it's a lot easier to keep track of like everything that you can do and what the other guys can do. But yeah.
Yeah, I know that, like in Legacy, like the really old first print Magic cards, they were completely bonkers.
Yeah.
Where like you had a card that costs nothing and it just gives you, I think, 5 mana or 3 mana or something. So it costs nothing and you just play stuff. You can just play stuff. Like at first turn, you can never have 5 mana today, but then in Legacy you can just play that card, you get 3 or 5 mana or whatever, and then you play more cards that create more mana while being played, or like you had cards that just let you take another turn. So you take your turn, you play. Yeah, I just take another turn, and you maybe draw that card again, and then you just play it again. So, like, you have 5 turns in a row, and the other guy doesn't even get to play.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like, yeah, I could see why like people could think that the new ones like structure would be kind of more boring because it's more static, but in vice versa terms, you could also say like something like that is boring because one guy just spams his OP cards. So
yeah, it's not only boring, but it's really fucking expensive to play. Because I don't know about virtual trading card games, but in the real trading card game, these cards don't get reprinted, so they are really expensive. So maybe one card can cost you $500, one card, and you need it 4 times. So yeah, you can imagine how expensive a Magic deck can be. Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll have like these LCD cards that just you switch out what the card is in real life, so you can play them in person, but it's still virtual.
That would be kind of cool. So, all right then, let's move on to the developer perspective, I guess. Because you're a game dev. Maybe let's start with you. What do you think as a game developer, when you want to create a trading card game, is important, or what would you do first?
Wait, okay, before I answer that, you sure you don't want to start with, like, we could go from design, because, like, that's kind of more relevant to, like, what we just talked about, right? So we could say, like, design in terms of, like, balance and stuff like that, and then move on to technicals?
Uh, ugh. You mean like the system technicals or like the rules technicals?
Systems, like how to build it, and I guess also in terms of, like, the market.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess we would start with design first. Then. Uh. So should I start then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first, I think as a developer, you need to think about the rule set. Like, how many cards do you play with at the beginning of a game? How many can you play during your turn? Is there something like resources involved? Or like, how do you decide which player starts? Is it like a coin toss, or is it like in chess, white starts and then black continues afterwards? And so I guess first you would need to think about the rules, and then how you use your cards to play inside of these rules. Like, for example, in Magic, if you play a creature, then it cannot attack in the first turn, because, for example, if you have one player having the first turn, it would be unfair if that player can attack without the other guy actually be able to defend. And so you would need to think about stuff like that as well, where you just say, what would be kind of unfair, and kind of construct the rules to function with the abilities of the creatures, or spells, or whatever you're gonna implement in the game. Also, I guess one thing that's also very important is the whole design or kind of lore thing. I mean, Magic the Gathering is about myths and like dragons and harpies and whatever you can think of. And then in like Yu-Gi-Oh, it's about monsters and kind of demons, and kind of more the Japanese touch, where the design is kind of Japanese instead of Western myths. And well, in Hearthstone, it's based on Warcraft characters, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that's also very important to actually make the game attractive, where like the design of the cards also needs to work in the story or the lore, or maybe like the rules as well. Maybe it would be a bit boring to play another fantasy trading card game for the 100th time, because you can just play Magic or Hearthstone or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever is popular. So maybe you want to do something that's a bit different.
Yeah, we're the robot dystopian trading card games.
So that.
Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead.
From design point, I think.
Okay, so then we say in terms of like whether or not you should make one, I guess, right? And I mean, What do you think about like? I mean, like it's not obviously like trading card game, or at least virtual trading card game. I don't think is as saturated or as controlled as something like MOBA. Though people definitely have like their favorites. So I think you have to make something really interesting for people to like actually want to stick to it or like main that game, right? Because I mean, yeah, you already have Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and like Hearthstone, which people are kind of like they're attached to. And I don't know.
They also started at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I mean, yeah. So there's also Elder Scrolls Legends, which came out like recently. Actually, I don't know if it's out of beta or not yet. But I mean, I don't know how well that's doing, but I mean, it has an interesting franchise or lore behind it, as well as like some innovative features. Like there are 2 lanes to put down creatures and stuff like that. I mean, I haven't played it much, so I don't really know exactly if it's that different from Hearthstone. But I mean, like, yeah, it's something like personally, I think I like Elder Scrolls lore more than I like Warcraft lore. So if it's a good game, then I might consider playing that one more. So I mean, like stuff like how interesting is the lore, and how innovative is the design of how like the matches actually run. Like how does your resources work? How do your turns work, and what kind of different mechanics do your cards have? I think, and so I think like if a game is super balanced, I think it can do well, like with the appropriate marketing and stuff like that. If it's super fun, then people recommend it to each other and try it out.
Yeah, I think so as well. Sorry, is there anything you?
Yeah.
Did I stop you from saying something?
Yeah, I wanted to briefly say. Actually, why don't you go ahead, because mine might be like more irrelevant. So.
Okay. I think making a trading card game today still makes sense, because I think Hearthstone was the first big one on smartphones. For example, that you can play on PC and a smartphone.
Well, actually,
tablet and
it came out on tablet only recently, like 6 months ago, something like that, maybe a year. But yeah, it was PC mainly.
Yeah, so but I think like you have the smartphone market, and also I think trading card games are cheap to test, because what makes a magic card a magic card? The artwork, kind of like the artwork and the mechanics.
Yeah.
I mean, in Yu-Gi-Oh, you have cards with 3,000 attack, and in Magic it's 5 attack, and yeah, so like the number is just different.
Yeah.
And then the artwork is different, and the name is different, but it works the same way. You just you attack or defend, and the creature survives or it gets destroyed. And so what makes them different is the artwork. And in when you think about creating a trading card game, you can just say, okay, you think about the rules and about the creatures, and you just say, yeah, I got, let's say, a headless orc. You don't need to draw the artwork first. You just say, okay, this card is named Headless Orc.
Yeah.
I don't have an artwork. It has 100 attack, 50 defense, and it has a special ability of grow head, gain 200 attack or something.
It's blinded.
So,
it's a random enemy.
Yeah, so, something like that. You just say, okay, I want to have. Maybe you don't even think about the names first. You just say, okay, I want to have a card that lets me draw cards. I want to have a card that discards cards. I want to have cards that attack. want to have cards that mainly defend. And so in that case, all you kind of need is a Word document where you just type in, like, or maybe a table where you have card A, 5 attack, 1 defense, or something like that. So what I want to say is that it's cheap to develop first, and I guess then if you say, okay, it makes sense, I tested it with my friends, or maybe you talk to somebody from the game industry that says, yeah, makes sense, that is very knowledgeable, and says, yeah, you can do that. People might play it. Then, yeah, you just need to find somebody to do the artworks, and yeah, that's kind of it, right?
Yeah, unless that's you.
to get everything started, then of course you need to create the application. If you create a video game, trading card game, somehow you need to be able to play, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, in that case, but I think first, I think that's kind of the minor problem of creating a trading card game. It's more about like the design and the artwork, how like the presentation.
Yeah. I think in terms of most games, actually, like probably 90% of why people get in is the artwork and marketing, and then they stay for the mechanics afterward. I think, I mean, that's kind of how reviews work, right? People will pre-order a game and then either get disappointed or, not disappointed. So, I mean, yeah, like, for example, like, a lot of people dislike Mass Effect Andromeda because what they got seemed different from what they were expecting. Or, Battlefield or Battlefront 2, people, like, think Star Wars art is awesome. They get into it, they see a stupid payment system, then they leave, right? So
yeah.
So I was going to... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. What I wanted to say is that when you create a niche trading card game, then yeah, maybe you can put it out on the market cheaply. I mean, it's virtual.
Yeah.
It's just virtual, and you can raise the prices afterwards after you have a player base. But to just get people to actually play, because if there's nobody to play, then people just uninstall. Or, well, maybe you can do something like a waifu, Japanese anime waifu trading card game.
That will get sales,
I
guarantee
there are too
it.
many already. Sorry, guys. That's a stupid idea. There are too many Japanese waifu anime trading card games on smartphones already. Sorry. Don't use that. Don't use that idea.
Pretty much. I was going to say something earlier about like having people actually interested in the game. Can't remember it right now. Maybe I'll remember it later.
Okay. Yeah. Like I think what's important is to test with your friends, because if guys that like you hate your game, or they say, yeah, this game sucks, I mean, they will be very open about their opinion, because they are your friends, and they will tell you, yeah, sorry, dude, but that game is kind of boring to play. I just spam Murlocs, and the other guy just spams Murlocs, and we see who doesn't draw a Murloc on his next turn first, and that guy loses. That's boring. So, like if you test with people that you know first, then you get very honest feedback where they might say, yeah, that system is broken, or I don't get that rule. Why does it exist? What does it do? And yeah, that way, I guess you can kind of probe if your game is kind of good or makes sense to play. I mean, you can just print cards first and then hand them to them and tell them, yeah, construct a deck from those. You don't even need to program the game first and make them play the game on the smartphone with NetPlay or something.
Yeah, and I mean, you might even want to do that. You might want to first design all the cards and then have make just a builder for it, and then in the builder, like maybe you can write descriptions so players can say like how you supposed to do this, for example. So I mean, like you could toss it out to tons of people and say, hey, make a deck with this, and then tell me how to play the deck, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe those guys, they will tell you, yeah, I got a good idea for a card. Maybe like, I mean, you can draw cards and discard cards, but there's nothing to counter it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe add a card that counters this, where maybe if somebody just draws cards, then you play a counter and he has to discard them or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you will get some new ideas from other guys, I think, that way.
For sure.
I think in trading card games, it's mostly about getting kind of the what is it, like the outline first.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it to somebody, and then get feedback, and then improve.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say about in terms of like actually getting traction or players, is what a lot of the trading card game like industry has been controlled by is like having a bunch of cards behind a payment gate. So I mean, you could either have some kind of event where you get the free cards, or maybe even just have a game where cards are like free, if that's even financially possible, which I don't know. Like that's like if there's a new game that's really fun and you could get the cards very easily, at least at the beginning, players are going to be like all over that if they actually are able to find out about it and the artwork is cool. So because I mean, if you look at every single popular trading card game right now, they all have this payment system where it's hard to get your cards, in my opinion at least. So that's something to think about.
Is a booster pack also a loot box? But we won't discuss this now. But
yeah, kind of. I actually thought about that. Yeah, it kind of is. So
yeah, good. That so. Is there? I'm finished for today. Is there anything else you want to comment before we're done?
Yeah, I think that's it. But
all right, then then that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in into our 20th episode on trading card games. If you have a favorite trading card game, then let us know, and maybe you're a complete trading card game junkie. Maybe if there's something we didn't talk about that you really like about the genre, let us know as well. And else there's nothing more to say, and then hope to see you guys again next week.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.